Welcome on into BKL Nightly. I'm Thad Brown, joined by Caleb Cart. Tonight it is Monday, November the 10th, day after the Bills got a drubbing in Miami, 30-13, the final. We're going to talk about what the coaches had to say today about that game, injury updates, rumors too about coaches who may or may not be coming to Buffalo anytime soon. But first, let's get to that injury stuff today because there were a couple of notable updates. The first one, of course, is Dalton Kincaid. There was a report earlier today that Kincaid was week to week. Sean McDermott confirmed that today. He's got a hamstring injury. Caleb and I were talking about hamstring injuries a little while earlier. These are tough to really nail down. It's not like a broken bone where you have X amount of days before you come back. He will be injured until he's not injured. So it's kind of indefinite, but it seemed like he will probably, Kincaid, miss at least a week. Then Landon Jackson, the report was he damaged his knee pretty badly. I think it was an MCL and a PCL tear. Either way, the report was that Jackson would be out for a long time. All Sean McDermott would say today is that he certainly won't play this week. They didn't have a timetable for him at this point. So those two guys are out. The good news, Caleb, is that TJ Sanders had his practice window open, so his 21-day window will begin this week. Look, the Bills need any help they can get at defensive tackle right now.
Yeah.
TJ Sanders is not at the top of my list of guys who I think will have an impact, but anything will help.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked so much. We talked at the trade deadline. We've talked with injuries. We talked about this when Hoyt went out. Depth is a problem. You know, obviously, Ed Oliver not being there to be the star of your defensive line is also tough. But one of the big problems, and now with Landon Jackson going out too, he's a guy that, although you don't expect to make this huge impact, you at least have a body that can go out there and play a snap of football, and you expect him to not suck, at least, you know, at the bare minimum. So TJ Sanders coming back is really valuable, even if it's just that a body. Yeah.
It is rough. That's what we're talking about, but that is a viable conversation that any functional body, someone who can play in the NFL, will be welcomed by the Bills with open arms. So TJ Sanders doesn't mean he'll play this week, but at least the practice window is open for now. Like we said, the Bills coaches, Sean McDermott, along with the two coordinators today, did address not necessarily what happened yesterday in Miami, but what the Bills do now moving forward. And one of the major parts of the problem in the game against the Dolphins was the offense scoring only 13 points. Joe Brady did not hesitate to say that this is something he's got to be better at.
When we play like we played, I got to be better, right? Like I'm not going to point the fingers at anybody else. If when we have that type of performance, it falls solely on me. And if guys aren't getting involved in ways that they probably should, again, that's strictly on me. And so it's something that as a staff we continue to look at and try to find ways.
You got to learn from it. And we talk about what did we learn from it? How do we learn from that experience so that we move forward better? That's the important part. That's really the only thing we can control right now, and then how we handle ourselves moving forward.
It's not the end of the season. It's not the end of the season. We're 6-3, and our guys need to have an intentionality and urgency and understanding, okay, this is where we're at. This is what we need to do to get to where we want to go, and this is where we're at right now.
Not only got a nice array of sweatshirt game from the Bills coaches there, you got kind of the three levels of moving on after a loss like this. Take the blame, talk about getting better, and then move forward. Caleb, you and I talked a lot in the BKL Nightly Game Day Recap show yesterday about all the different things that went wrong in this loss for the Bills. What is, a day later, the one or maybe two things that stood out to you above the rest for really any reason?
Right now, it's the lack of answers on the offensive side of the ball. I think that's the best way that I can think to put it, because outside of, you know, if James Cook isn't able to carry the rock the way that he has most of this season, there's really no answers. And, you know, I went back and I said, okay, is it Josh Allen? Is it the receivers? Is it Dalton Kincaid getting injured? Is it, I don't think it's the offensive line, but is it something with the O-line? Is it Joe Brady? Like, who is responsible? And I don't think there's one person responsible for it not going good, but I think they're all, okay, let me rephrase that. I don't think there's one person or one area responsible for how bad it was, but I think they're all responsible for it not being good, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
Like, nobody is answering the question of what do we do now? Like, James Cook, they're stopping James Cook. Okay, now what? nobody's stepping forward. I think that's my biggest concern. If at least one person, and I think Josh Allen is probably the one that's doing that the most, stepping forward the most, because you see some of those crazy plays that he is still Josh Allen. He can still make Josh Allen plays. So you see that every now and again. But like outside of him, nobody's answering the question of, okay, now what?
Identifying the problem and identifying the solution are not the same thing. I know what you're saying there. And there's not enough solutions on this offense. You know, a funny thing for me is the thing that stood out to me is the thing that we think is the solution. It was the run game. If you can't run the ball against Miami, what are you going to do? To your point, without having other viable solutions to turn to, the Bills are going to have to rely on James Cook and the offensive line. And the Dolphins, at least up until that game yesterday, were 30th in the NFL in stopping the run. If you can't run against them, think about the AFC likely playoff teams. Let me know when I get to a poor defense. Chargers, Broncos, Chiefs, Colts, Ravens, Steelers sometimes, Patriots.
They're all good.
Right. The Bills probably have the worst defense of the group in there, and that's not even knocking the Bills. That's not the point of this conversation. The point is, if you can't throw your fastball against the Dolphins, who are like a 9-hitter, an 8-hitter, what are you going to do when you've got to face the 1, 2, and 3 hitters in January? So that to me is the concern, that it was a bad game. Any one game can happen, but they got to figure that out before we get to the playoffs. The other thing that really stood out to me, and something that we didn't get to yesterday in the postgame show because we didn't get the sound bites from the players while we're listening to Sean McDermott and Josh Allen, is the number of guys in the locker room yesterday who talked about the Dolphins having more interest in winning the game. Let me show you what the guys had to say yesterday before we continue this conversation.
We got to have better energy than them. They came out flying, and we just didn't answer the call right away, and then you get so far back on your heels that it's hard to recover. So we just got to come out quicker, faster, play smarter football.
It just was clear out there on the field. They just had a chip on their shoulder, and they wanted to go out and prove something, and definitely felt like they wanted it more. So we got to do a lot of self-evaluation and kind of get introspective with that, look at ourselves, and figure out how to go from here.
Our division opponents play us extremely hard. Jets, Dolphins, and Patriots. No matter what the record is, they play us hard. So we got their best version of them today, and I tip my hat. Congrats to the fans.
Now, look, some of that I think is what players do when you lose a game. You talk about how their team played well. You give them credit. These guys are professionals. They have respect for each other. So that part of it, I think, is just what goes. But when Deion Dawkins talks about we got the best shot, and we always get the best shot of division teams, you're the Bills. You get everybody's best shot. You should be used to it by now. This can't be this game went poorly because, that other team played really, really well. They really wanted to beat us. Everybody does. So that can't be a factor. The other thing is, and we talked about this yesterday, with all that was at stake, where you are in the playoff race, looking up at the Patriots, the division tiebreakers on the line, there's no excuse for having less want to in this game, especially against a team that came in at 2-7. And there's levels of this too. There's 17 games in a year. I've said before, you're going to have a couple where a team comes out flat. These are human beings. The Bills are really good at being even keel and treating every game the same. So as good as they are, they're still going to have 1 or 2 or 3 where it doesn't work. They got hammered by a 2-7 team. I've seen the Bills come out flat and lose games to the Jets in overtime and by field goals. I've seen the Bills come out flat and get down 20-0 to the Ravens, and then in some cases come back and make it a game. Those you understand. When you want to tell me that you came out flat and then you couldn't come within 3 scores of one of the worst teams in the NFL, that to me is a concern. And that's why I wanted to bring this up, why I wanted to talk about it. I don't know if there's a future point to make here, but the idea that this is in the bag for the Bills emotionally, I think should be bothersome.
Yeah, I agree with you that just the fact that it's a possibility now, because like you said, we haven't seen them. We haven't seen something this bad in a while.
First time since Josh Allen's rookie year, they lost the division game by more than a score.
Yeah. So something where they go in and they just look terrible like they did yesterday. Like we haven't seen anything like that in quite a while. And I don't want to make an excuse because it's not an excuse at all. But the only thing I can think of that makes me, confident that it's like not going to happen again. Because like you said, we now know that this is in the range of possibilities. Before it was like, it could happen, I guess. I guess they could lose by 3 scores to the Dolphins.
If I had told you they were going to lose by 30 to 13 to Miami and the score would have been generous, you would have flat out rejected that on its face.
I would have. But like deep down, and like if we had a real conversation, I would have admitted, okay, yes, it's possible, but it's not going to happen. But now it's kind of like, okay, it's possible. I guess it could happen. Like it's now there. The only reason that I'm maybe drifting away from that a little bit is because they did play the Kansas City Chiefs the week before. And because there was that high and it's everybody knows like this is the big game. I mean, even before the season started, even before we knew who these teams were, that was the game. It was Bills, Chiefs. Week 9, correct, right?
Yeah.
Week 9, Bills, Chiefs, that was the game. And now then you come into it and both teams have looked and both teams have, now it made it even bigger. It made it like, we really need this win now. We really, really need this game now. And I don't agree that like a hangover off of that game should be a thing because you're professional football players, you play in the NFL, you should be able to get over that. But that, like the fact that they were so high on that week, and then they came down so low the next week, makes me a little bit more confident that like it's not going to happen again. But I still agree with you that like the fact that it did and the fact that we've now seen it makes me worried about what we're going to see next week and the week after that.
2 things I'm going to push back on with that. Number one, we talked a little bit that Chiefs-Bills didn't feel as big as Chiefs-Bills has been in previous years, in part because they've played so many dang times. That was the 10th time they've played the Allen versus Mahomes version. The other thing is because of the Bills winning in the regular season, not having postseason success, that took a little luster off it. But mainly, as we talked about, the Bills have played so many, finger quotes, big games. They know how to handle it.
You would think.
Well,
Yes.
you know what? This is a good point because they they didn't follow it up very well.
Because they didn't handle it well. They went out there and they won the game, which you're like, okay, that's check 1 of how you handle it. But then check 2 is you don't lose in the trap game the next week.
Right.
And not only did they lose, they got the doors blown off of them.
The other thing I want to really push back on, and this is the thing that would concern me most if we're going to go with your theory, which could very well be correct. If you have that reaction to one big win, how are you supposed to put 3 of them together in January?
That's a great point.
Because if you're gonna react this way to the big game, then you're gonna lose 50-0 in the next game if you're gonna lose by 17 to Miami. So look, there is a part of this where it's one game and it's the NFL and things happen. I mean, the Packers have 2 losses this year to the Carolina and to Cleveland. So inexplicable things happen in this league, and I think more so this year. But the level of this loss, losing to Miami. You lose on the road in the division, that happens. You get hammered like Buffalo got hammered, that's where I think we have the concern right now.
Yeah, and to your point about the Packers, I mean, I don't know if I'd put the Bills in the same boat as them right now because with the Packers, you look at their loss to Cleveland and their loss to Carolina, those were bad losses. But you look at the rest of their season, it's been pretty darn good. I mean, even with the Dallas Cowboys overtime game, I would still say that they played well. It was just Dallas kind of stepped up in that game. I can't really say that. Like outside of the second half of the Baltimore game and the Kansas City Chiefs game, and I mean, I get the Jets and the Panthers, who are 2 of the worst. Well, I guess the Panthers were playing they played like one of the worst.
The Andy
teams.
Dalton Panthers.
The
are
Andy
one of the
Dalton
worst
players
teams.
are one of the worst. Yes, and then the Jets. Those are 2 of some of the worst teams in the league. Outside of those games, they haven't looked great. They didn't look great against New Orleans. They obviously lost against the Falcons and the Patriots. They lost against the Dolphins. They
didn't look great in the first Dolphins win.
They didn't look great in the first Dolphins win. They didn't look great in the first half against the Ravens.
Yeah.
So, outside of that, they really haven't looked great. The Packers, they've shown me enough where I can say they're still a good team. Even though they lost to the Browns, they're still a good team. I don't know if the Bills have. I
don't want to get too sidetracked, but Packers wins this year. Detroit week 1, great win by 14. Commanders with Jaden Daniels by 9. Not good bad. Win. The other wins are the Bengals at home by 9. The Cardinals on the road by 4, the Steelers on the road by 10. So better than what Buffalo's got, but not ridiculous.
Not insane, not crazy, but definitely better than Buffalo, yeah.
All right, let's move on to the BKL Nightly Roundtable. Topic number 1 is something that a lot of people were talking about around Western New York today. Brian Daboll, of course, fired by the Giants today. Many people thought, well, let's just get him on the Bills staff because he will fix everything that's wrong with the offense. Sean McDermott got a question about that today and said very bluntly that Dable coming back to the offensive staff is, quote, not something under consideration right now. Doesn't mean it can't ever happen. But let's have the debate, since this is a part-time debate show. How much could Brian Dable, Caleb, help the Bills if they were to add him to the offensive staff? And I'll let you pick whatever job you want.
Are we talking like right now, like next week? Or are we
ASAP.
talking?
He's on a plane tomorrow.
Okay. I think it is more negative than it is positive. Like, don't get me wrong. He knows what he's doing. Obviously, we saw him in Buffalo. And even though these head coaching opportunities are so tough because you go to the Giants and like, what is the expectation there for you to turn them around in 3 years? It's not going to happen. But I think he did.
That is the expectation, though, for everybody.
Expectation, but it's not going to happen. It's going to happen 10% of the time, maybe.
I don't want to get sidetracked. Go ahead. Keep going with the Bills point here.
But yes, so I do think that he's a good, maybe not a great head coach, but I do still believe that he's a really good offensive coordinator and he knows what he's doing on the offensive side of the ball, especially with the quarterback. And he has a good connection with Allen. If that connection's still there, they at least had a good connection before he left. So I do think that that's very valuable, but to bring him in right now, that just tells Joe Brady that you don't have confidence in him. That tells your offense that you don't have confidence in them. That tells Josh Allen that there's trouble behind the closed doors. That tells the fans that all the fans are saying, oh, bring him in. I'm like, no, don't bring him in because that just shows me that you're lost. Like if the Bills bring in Brian Daboll, which I agree with you, could potentially happen. Just because Sean McDermott shut it down doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
That's more of a Josh Allen call than a Sean McDermott call, almost.
If you bring him in, to me, that just says Buffalo's lost. They have no clue what they're doing. They don't know where they are, and they don't know where they're going.
I like that point a lot. I really do. The place where I landed with this was, if you're going to do it, to what you said before about it shows no confidence in Joe Brady, the only way you do it is if Dable's the offensive coordinator and Brady gets demoted and or fired.
You have to, yeah.
Right. There's no way Dable comes in and will just kind of cozily nestle into the offensive meeting room and, I've got a couple ideas. I'll just throw them out there.
Yeah, I saw a couple of people be like, he could be a correspondent. No.
My goodness.
Also, from his point of view, I'm not going to go from being an NFL head coach to a correspondent.
Right.
Like, I'm not making that jump. No.
Right. To that point, too, would Brian Dable even accept something less than offensive coordinator?
Yes.
But one of the other good points, I just want to bring this up. Someone pointed out that would Sean McDermott even want him here? Because Brian Dable is one of the few guys that could legitimately be a threat to Sean McDermott with Terry Pegula as an owner. Because there are many people, Terry Pegula is going to be very, very loath to just bring in random new coach if he ever decided to move on from Sean McDermott. But you got a guy who knows the town, likes the quarterback likes him. Dable checks a lot of boxes to be that guy. So why would McDermott bring him in unless you want to go with the friends close, enemies closer thing? So that's a thing too. But the one thing that I do want to point out about why I thought this wouldn't be the worst idea in the world, and I don't think it is when you say this admits that we don't have any idea what we're doing. What if that's true?
I think it is true.
What if that's the case?
But you don't want to admit it.
Right.
You don't want to show that.
But if admitting it is the first step towards fixing it, Brian, at this point, anything might be a help for this passing game. And Brian Dable certainly checks the box of anything. Yeah. So that's the only thing. I'm with you in general, though. I don't think the move really made a lot of practical sense when you started to think about how he fits into the staff, how all the ripples that happened when Brian Dable would come to Orchard Park.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ready to give up on Sean McDermott yet, but I will say that if I had to give up on Sean McDermott, I wouldn't mind Brian Dable stepping in. As
my point for me.
As you started to go on that little rant, I started to agree with you more and more that maybe they should bring him in just so that he can take over next year if this year doesn't pan out. But again, I'm not ready to give up on Sean McDermott yet. That's not what I'm saying. Not
my original idea, by the way. I got that from Steve Irwin, someone on X. So just credit where credit's due. All right, number 2 roundtable topic. Look, Bills are 6-3. The division is now a long shot. Depending on what playoff machine you go to, their chances to win the AFC East are probably somewhere between 15 and 25%. So very, very unlikely at this point. Certainly not impossible. What are the new reasonable goals for the Bills this season. In August, it was 1 seed, host the AFC Championship, win the Super Bowl. All those things could still happen. But where the Bills are now, what we know they are on the field, and what their record and their spot in the standing says they are, what, in your opinion, are now the new reasonable goals for the rest of this Bills season?
I think for the Bills themselves, the goal should have, because I agree with you that before the season it was top seed in the AFC.
This is not like what the Bills themselves.
Yeah, no, I know.
What me and you just talking, you're saying.
I think the goal should still be at least top spot in the AFC East, but like you said, it's not super likely. So I think the new goal, or at least the reasonable goal, should be stay at that 5th spot in the wild card spot, because I think they're number 6 right now behind the Chargers, I believe.
Correct.
Get that 5th spot so that at least if you can't get the number 1 in the AFC East and you can't get home field advantage, you can at least play the worst division winner, which right now is the Steelers, and I wouldn't hate that if that stayed the same.
Probably would end up being Baltimore, though.
It will probably end up being Baltimore, which I don't like as much. But if it stayed Pittsburgh, I would prefer that. And just get healthy and get comfortable with each other, because we've talked so much about like the revolving door that's been the defensive line, and just the revolving door that's been the defense, honestly, as a whole. Just get healthy, get comfortable with each other, get into a flow. And they're playing the Bucs next week. I do think that's a big game, and that's a game that they really need to go out there and win. But like I don't need them to look good or great next week. I need them to look great week 18 and week 1 of the preseason or the postseason.
I think that's pretty logical. I think it makes a lot of sense. I still want to put the division out there as my reasonable goal. It may not be an easy goal, but I still think the Patriots with a young quarterback and a brand new core, to me, still are not a team where you just assume they go out and take care of their business every single week. They've got a lot of very easy games. This has been the theme of their year, just rolling through teams that can barely walk and chew gum at the same time. I'm not going to put it past them that they can't drop one of those, and the Bills, at least for the short term, keep pace, force New England at least to take care of their business. I think might be the way I want to say this. You may not win the division, but if you make New England win 13, 14 games, then I think you'd feel good about, how the season ends. Yeah. And then the rest of it, whatever else I had, I don't like anymore. I want to go with what you said. Get this team healthy as much as possible. Figure out roles, especially with the passing game. Figure out something that works. Yeah. Figure out something that you can at least feel like you can depend on going to the postseason. Every Monday, we review the game that happened and talk about players and or position groups that we feel better or worse about. It's time for confidence up, concern up. Confidence up, number 1. Caleb, who do you like better, if there is anybody, coming out of this mess in Miami?
I think I used him last week, but I'm going to use him again. Cole Bishop. He didn't have as big of a statistical game like in the box score as he did last week against Kansas City, which I don't. That was just an absolute crazy game for him. I don't know if he ever does that again. But he still just is continuing to make plays. He's looking good out there. He's starting to become a safety that I feel like they can rely on. Like before, like if you would have asked me 3-4 weeks ago, I was like, ugh, maybe it's a good thing they're bringing Jordan Poyer back, because I don't know what Cole Bishop can do back there. But I'm starting to feel very comfortable with him back there.
Jordan Poyer was almost my answer for this, by the way. He had the most tackles on the team last week with 8, and there was the first touchdown. I'm not sure if Poyer was responsible for that. It's possible, but he's had 2 decent games in a row. My real answer for this, though, is going to be Joey Bosa. 4 tackles, 2 for a loss, played through the wrist injury. Frankly, with the wrist injury, you could put him in this category or the next one, to be honest. But we've had Joey Bosa now continue to play at a high level. Now he's got an injury, but he's still fighting through a game where the Bills lost the defensive end early. I like Bosa's game. I like his contributions. And the fact he continues to stay healthy, to me, encourages me just a little bit. Concern up. Obviously, the list for this is pretty lengthy. Where did you go?
I went D-line, and I do want to point out that that's kind of excluding Joey Bosa, D-line excluding Bosa. Just get him out of there. Everyone else, though, both because of injuries and just because of the consistency at which they're playing, both the run game and pressuring the quarterback. The run game, like defensively, I thought was getting better. They looked a lot better against Carolina, who had Riku Dowell, who was just going off before them. And they looked pretty good against Kansas City, who isn't known for their crazy run game, but with Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco, they were still getting the job done. And they were able to shut both of those teams down pretty well. Exact opposite happened yesterday in Miami. They just could not do anything. And then there's only 2 games this season that the Bills have not gotten a sack. And now, obviously, I know linebackers and secondary can get sacks as well, and they have for the Bills. But quarterback pressure from the D-line is one of the main aspects of getting sacks.
Sure.
And there's only 2 games this season where the Bills have walked away without a sack. Miami and Miami. They have not brought Tua down in either of the 2 games they played. Every other quarterback they faced, every other team, they were able to sack him. Now, whether that's just the Dolphins or whether it's what I think it is, which is just the D-line starting to kind of go on a downward slope.
The Dolphins are a part of it. They do. The Dolphins get the ball out faster
Yes.
than any other team, the way their offense works. They're very hard to sack. I've done interviews with Greg Rousseau on Miami Week, and you can kind of see the look in his eyes again, I got to play them again. So there is a part of this that's on Miami, but the rest of the run game stuff, very valid. I mean, Devon Achane became the 3rd running back to go for 169 or more in a game this year. The Bills have allowed 3 of the 8 biggest rushing games in the season individually so far. My concern up is actually the linebackers, which is not too far from what you're talking about. Only 1 tackle for a loss combined. Again, the numbers, Devon Achane was just all over the place. Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano just aren't doing enough. It's not all their fault. The defensive line plays a part in that. You need the D-line to occupy blockers to give them space to operate. But for 2 guys who are supposed to be 2 of the better players on this team, they continue to not be that. And there was a question for Sean McDermott today about Shaq Thompson and Terrell Bernard, and actually it's for Bobby Babich. And Babich said, look, we're going to play the better player. Didn't say Terrell Bernard is the starter. We're going to play the better player. I don't know if this means Bernard's going to move out. I don't think it does, but it does reflect where these guys have been of late. We talked about Max Harrison. Actually, we didn't talk about him. Let's talk about him right now. Didn't have a great game. Gave up the big touchdown early, but did come back with an interception, and Bobby Babich talked about how important that was.
That's not going to be the last touchdown Max Harrison gives up. It's not going to be the last catch he gives up. Playing corner in this league is a challenge. There's really good receivers, but it was awesome to see him respond. Again, we talk about the resiliency all the time. And Max is going to be a good player. He's going to be a good player. The faster you learn from your failures is the best teacher you can have.
Listen, I agree that the interception has nothing to do with the overall outcome of the game. But for a kid who missed a lot of time, for a rookie who missed a lot of time early in the season, to go out there and within your first 3 games be rewarded for what you're doing twice, I think that's huge for his confidence. Even if it really didn't matter, I do think that just getting that pick is going to be huge for his confidence.
Max Harrison is such a smiley guy. I feel like vibes. This is a guy who can channel vibes and use vibes, kind of like Jordan Phillips a little bit in a different way. Even if you have the bad game or the bad play, to have the good play that finishes it, that helps him end with good vibes, I think that could go a long way towards how he develops as the season goes along. All right, that's going to do it for us in this edition of BKL Nightly. We will see you again tomorrow. It'll be me and Carl Jones. Let's talk ball. We might have a couple things to say with the X's and O's from the Bills and Dolphins. For Caleb Carr, I'm Thad Brown. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow right on this channel with another edition of BKL Nightly.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.